Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. Free agency is here, and it is already taken off with pretty much. It seems like everybody's already off the board. Honestly, some big sign and trades, some big outright signings, and some teams, the Celtics, doing absolutely nothing. So Sap, obviously the biggest domino to fall yesterday was Kyle Lowry going to the Heat. That happened at about 1 second past 6 o'clock. Clearly, those two teams just really liked each other. There was no talking prior to the moratorium on these things. So, what's your impression of Kyle Lowry to the Heat?
I think it's a good move for Miami. Obviously, he was the best player that moved yesterday and today so far. I don't think it was a great free agent class. I mean, it could have been obviously if Chris Paul or Kawhi Leonard decided to, become full-fledged free agents. Chris Paul's already opted back in with the Phoenix Suns, and who the hell knows what Kawhi's going to do? Probably going to accept a one-year deal, sit out the year, and then go for a longer contract next year. I don't expect Kawhi Leonard to play next year. We know how he's very careful with his body to the point where he sat out 73 games a few years ago, with what a lot of people describe as a bone bruise. So that's going to be a difficult decision, obviously, for the Clippers. But what decision do they have other than re-upping with him, because they've been irrelevant for their entire existence, except for the last 2 years when Kawhi Leonard's been their best player. So Kyle Lowry is the best player that was available. I think it's a good move for the Miami Heat. He's 36 years old. He's kind of the poor man's Chris Paul. I mean, they bring in a lot of the same strengths to a team. They play good defense. They're floor generals. They're leaders. All of that interesting stuff. So I think he's going to help Miami. It's also going to position them with a backcourt of Kyle Lowry and Jimmy Butler that is going to be the biggest pain in the ass backcourt in the NBA, right? You're going to
Yeah.
love that team, Jet. If you weren't such a big Celtics fan, you may adopt the Miami Heat as your favorite team, because that backcourt is going to be very competitive, to say the least. They'll lead the league in accepting charges because they're both physical defensive players. So I think it's a good move for the Heat. I think some people are going overboard with it, because I saw Lowry last year. I think his play slipped a little bit. He's 36. He's a 6 foot point guard, but you can also chalk that up to it. Again, it was a weird year. The Raptors weren't playing in Toronto. They were playing in Tampa. There were all the COVID restrictions, and Toronto was out of it by midseason. So I think it's a good move for Miami. They probably jump up to being the third best team in the Eastern Conference behind Brooklyn and the defending champion Milwaukee Bucks. So good move for them.
Yeah, definitely a good move for them. I mean, they get a guy who totally fits everything they want to do in Miami.
Mhm.
The way that they play. 3 years, $90 million. You probably you probably have a 1 or 2 year window now,
Right.
with the age of Jimmy Butler and Kyle Lowry. So you're paying for a short window, which Miami's fully comfortable doing. Jimmy Butler also did sign an extension there. He 4 years, 184, so he got a
Mhm.
massive paycheck. But yeah, I mean, I don't see how this is detrimental at all to the Heat. They saw who the best player really available in free agency was. He fits a need for them. And it certainly makes them, like you said, Sab, very competitive in the East. Does it put them past Brooklyn? Not in my opinion, but
No.
we don't know what Brooklyn's going to be looking like in terms of, if they're healthy or if they actually have chemistry because they played so little together. And certainly I'd say, they're right on par with Milwaukee, the defending champions now. They beat Milwaukee in the playoffs in the bubble a year ago. And I think Kyle Lowry certainly adds an extra dimension to Miami. That they were hoping Victor Oladipo would bring. It didn't really work out. And so Lowry, I think, is more of a sure bet. I mean, I just don't see how you could criticize anything about this for the Heat. The other signing that the Heat have that maybe you do want to criticize a little bit is they gave Duncan Robinson 5 years and $90 million, which to me seems like an astronomical price for a very, very one-dimensional player, Sap.
Yeah, I mean, topped only by the Knicks giving Evan Fournier 4 years, $78.5 million. At least Duncan Robinson is younger than Fournier, and he's proven that he can play well in the postseason, which Duncan Robinson did 2 years ago in the bubble. Yeah, that's an astronomical contract, actually the largest in NBA history for an undrafted player. 5 years, 90 million. It's like the Miami Heat. They're working on a different salary cap than everybody else because we know Jimmy Butler is going to be making around $45 million a year. You got Kyle Lowry at 30 million. Now you've got Duncan Robinson at 18. Bam Adebayo's getting paid. They also bring in PJ Tucker to be a really good role player, which I think is a smart move as well. I mean, actually, I think that the Heat will be playing better defense than the Dolphins this year with that collection of talent. So, yeah, Duncan Robinson, that was kind of surprising that the contract was that big. There were other surprises too, like Kelly Olynyk, 3 years, $37.5 million. Really? I mean, that
Yeah.
just shocked the hell out of me. Here's the problem I have with free agency. I don't think you have to jump into it to try to win the narrative. Hey, we're really trying to be a contending team, because now you're overpaying for average, which I think is the worst thing you can do in sports. Look, I know you're going to criticize the Celtics. Who were they really in on? Were they in on Kyle Lowry? It seemed like Kyle Lowry was going to Miami
No,
from the
not on
get
Kyle
go,
Lowry.
right? So that wasn't on Kyle Lowry. It was Lonzo Ball, someone that you would have liked to see with the
Yeah.
Celtics. I know I would. And Chicago got him for 4 years, what, 84 and a half
85.
million dollars,
Yep.
$85 million. So I think that's a decent deal for Chicago. I think Chicago won the day by getting Lonzo Ball, because now you put him with Zach Levine. You got Nikola Vucevic, who I think is a good big. So now you've got those three players to build upon. Rumor has it that they're going to get DeMar DeRozan in a sign and trade and send back Laurie Markkinen to the San Antonio Spurs. So, you're building something in Chicago. And they also added Alex Caruso, who's a nice role player. So I think Chicago had the best day yesterday, because I think Lonzo Ball is probably the most underappreciated player that moved yesterday, because his deal's not much more expensive than Evan Fournier. And I think Lonzo Ball offers a lot more than Fournier, because he's a much better defender, much better facilitator, and has become a good 3-point shooter. I thought the Bulls made a good move in signing Lonzo Ball, and that probably is what the Celtics should have done. That would have been the biggest move for the Celtics and the best move.
Yeah, I know. I totally agree, Sap. And I think people were all over the place on Celtics Twitter. Some people really were in love with the idea of adding Lonzo Ball. Some people were completely opposed to it. I just looked at it as, I think, now with Kemba Walker gone and Marcus Smart is your de facto starting point guard, you really want a distributor and somebody who can run an up tempo offense. Lonzo Ball is probably one of the handful of best passers, like
Mhm.
most gifted passers in the league. He plays really good defense. He's the same age as your two young stars. I thought it was sort of a no brainer. Um, but the Celtics would have had to be creative to try to make that work. They would have had to send out Marcus Smart and something else, and they seemed unwilling to do that. I mean, if you look at what the sign and trade ended up being for the Bulls, they didn't end up giving up too much to the Pelicans.
Right.
So it seemed like it was feasible to do, but maybe Lonzo was just more intrigued with playing in Chicago than Boston potentially. I don't know how close that negotiations even got, or if they were even realistic. But I agree with you. I think it was a really good move for Chicago. And I look at the Bulls as a team. They missed out on the playoffs last year, but now they're really building something. And I think that core of Levine, Ball, and Vucevic, and then they have a couple nice players that they've taken, with high picks the past couple of years. I do think that they could really be something, and I think that you could certainly make the case right now, and we'll talk about the Celtics a little bit more in a minute. Uh, the Celtics, I think, are getting passed by a lot of teams, which is really scary. If you're the Celtics, going, what the hell? You're letting Chicago look like they have a more bright future than you. Whereas a couple of years ago, you look like you're the brightest future in the NBA. So, that's certainly disappointing to me. But as far as that Lonzo Ball signing, I think the money is good. It seems right about the exact amount I would pay him. So I don't think it's an overpay. He's young. He has a chance to improve. He has a chance to improve with that core. So I agree with you. I think that signing for me gets an A from Chicago.
Yeah, I think that was the best signing of the day in terms of value. You're getting a young player. Kyle Lowry is outstanding, but again, he's 36. So, like you said, Jet, there's a 1, maybe 2 year window there with the Miami Heat, and that's what Miami does. They are always championship driven. Although since LeBron left following the 2014 season. They've really been a title contender once, and that was in the bubble when they beat the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals before losing 6 games to the LA Lakers in the championship round. But yeah, I thought that was a really good sign by the Chicago Bulls. I thought that was the best move of the day. I think Fournier signing with the Knicks was the worst move. You're getting a guy who's really one-dimensional, and again, the Knicks sometimes, you want to win the back page, so you just sign someone. I think sometimes the best approach is, well, let's just catch our breath and maybe you wait a year when the free agent pool will be much deeper and more talented. Now, you don't know what that's going to be next year. You can look at it right now and say player A, B, C, and D are all going to be available next year, but they may re-sign with their current teams. So you don't know what the free agent pool is going to look like in the summer of 2022. But to me, to just jump in and sign a player like Evan Fournier, I think there's guys like him that you could have signed for less money and a much shorter commitment than 4 years. This is why the Knicks have been, poorly run for, it seems like, my entire life, and I'm 58 years old. Yeah, as far as the Celtics, I mean, you're bringing in what, Chris Dunn and Josh Richardson as your recent acquisitions. I mean, what does that exactly do? It just looks to me, Jet, like the Celtics are trying to get a lot of guys with 1 year left on their contract, get through the season, and then they're all in on Bradley Beal, who could be a free agent next year. But it seems like all their eggs are in one basket, and it's the Bradley Beal basket.
Yeah, I think that's really dumb, obviously. And they, I said this the other day in the podcast. Brad Stevens is talking about flexibility for the near future stuff, but they should be in win now mode completely, because you're gonna, the longer you punt on regular seasons, the better chance you have of losing Jason Tatum or Jaylen
Mhm.
Brown in free agency. And I don't think that they're going to be patient, because no NBA players are patient now, with the
No.
exception of Dame Lillard and Brad Beal. I mean, that's two guys, and you're expecting Brad Beal to flake too. I from
Can
everything
I
I've
ask you
read
one
about.
more
Yeah.
one
Oh yeah.
question?
Please.
When did he become Brad Beal? He's always been Bradley Beal, but now he's Brad Beal.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just shortening it. Is it just me, or is
No,
everybody
no, it's not you.
saying that?
Everybody now calls him Brad Beal. He's been
Well, he's
Bradley Beal
graduated.
since he was at Florida, but now he's Brad Beal. I don't know. Maybe it's a new branding technique that he's using.
Yeah, maybe it is, but it's worked. Whatever it is, it is, as I'm clearly doing it. But I mean, everything that I've seen about him seems like he's loyal to the Wizards,
Hmm.
and it seemed like he was on board with the Westbrook trade, because clearly they're not making it without talking to him. They're going to get Spencer Dinwiddie, which I think is a nice piece too, and maybe
Hmm.
he even works better than Westbrook on that team. I mean, if you're going to put all your eggs in one basket, you better be pretty damn sure that that's going to come to fruition. And I'm not sure that Bradley Beal, Brad Beal, whatever you want to call him, is even going to hit free agency, let alone decide with the Celtics. Now, obviously, he's great friends with Jason Tatum, so you like to have that in your back pocket. But that I'm sure he's very good friends with some guys who are currently on the Wizards. Maybe he becomes best friends with Spencer Dinwiddie. I don't know. It seems foolish to me to put all your hopes and dreams in one guy. And I just hate the idea of, let's maintain our flexibility on a hope and a prayer. Try to win now. Do everything you can to win now. The Lakers are signed. I have a collective roster that's going to be 1,000 years old. They're trying to win right now, Sap. We can talk about the Lakers right now, and then continue to talk about the Celtics and Lakers
Sure.
too, and other signings, because I think the Lakers, and I got proven wrong last year when I said this. I think that they've done a fantastic job. I give them a lot of credit. I think that they've identified the right pieces to bring in to supplement what they lost when they sent out those guys in the Westbrook trade. Listen, Westbrook's better than any of those guys they got, but we said, okay, they have a lack of shooting, they have a lack of reliability at big. Well, they brought back Dwight Howard. I think that was a really good move. And then they've brought in Wayne Ellington, a dead-eye shooter, Trevor Ariza, a good 3-and-D guy, Malik Monk, a really good shooter, Carmelo Anthony, one of the best mid-range players in the game still, and Kent Bazemore, a good mid-range shooter. I think they've done a tremendous job. They've really filled out the roster well. Granted, the team is old, but it doesn't matter. They're not trying to play for the future. They're trying to play for right now. And I like the way they've constructed the depth of this team, Sap.
Well, you look at LeBron James, maybe he's casting Space Jam 3. Maybe this is his new version of the Looney Tunes, but it
Maybe.
is an old team, right? Carmelo Anthony's 37. He's actually older than LeBron James. LeBron James, 36. Marc Gasol, 36. Trevor Ariza, 36. Dwight Howard, 35. All five of those guys are now eligible to run for the U.S. presidency.
That's
Wayne
good.
Ellington is 33, Kent Bazemore 32, Russell Westbrook 32. Those three guys can run for the U.S. Senate. So the Lakers have 8 players eligible to run for the U.S. Senate, 5, of course, that can run for U.S. president. It's an ancient team. The young spring chicken is Anthony Davis, who's 28 with a long list of injury concerns. Are they going to make it through the regular season? There's going to be a lot of load managing here for the Lakers. Again, this is going to fall on LeBron James. He's going to have to be the guy that makes this work. Obviously, we can talk about um, the coaching staff led by Frank Vogel. They're going to have to make it work as well. But we kind of agree that LeBron probably coaches the team, or at least the co-coach with Frank Vogel. But on the court, he's going to be the guy that has to make this work. And there's a lot of weird parts here, right? Like Westbrook's not the easiest guy to play with. Carmelo, for the first time in his career, actually took care of his body in the offseason, but he is 37 years old. So we know Dwight Howard can be, a bit eccentric to say the least. So he's going to have to make all of this work. And what other player in the NBA would you trust more than LeBron James to make this work? Because he's done it wherever he's been. He's always taken these kind of weird concoctions and combinations and made it work. So yeah, this could be a home run, or this could be, a strikeout with all of these moves, because these guys are so damn old. But again, I think they did recognize, look, we've got maybe a 2-year window with LeBron. Let's go for it now. Let's keep him happy. Let's keep Anthony Davis happy. If Westbrook fits in, you've got yourself a big three, and then you got a bunch of guys that, can kind of fill in the roster spots accordingly.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem with the win now mentality and having an old
Mhm.
team if you legitimately have a shot at a championship. I mean, I don't think that they're fooling themselves into thinking they have a shot at a championship. They're not loading up. They're not like the Nets when they made the trade with the Celtics and getting Pierce and Garnett
Right.
completely on the back nine and thinking, okay, well, we can win a title with this team when, they were probably they got to exactly where they should have been, which was a second round, exit. This team, with LeBron and AD and Westbrook, I think they've surrounded it with the right type of supplemental pieces. Now, clearly, they're done. They have no ability to do anything else unless somebody wants to trade for one of these really old players during the regular season, which seems hard to imagine. But I like that it's a veteran team for LeBron. When LeBron retires and carries, the Lakers are gonna have to continue do this cycle all over again, where they're gonna suck for a couple of years. They'll lure a free agent who's really good, and they'll build again. But for
It'll be
right now,
Zion Williamson at that point, right? By
yeah,
then, he'll be ready to be a free agent, and he'll be with the Lakers.
very well, maybe.
Yeah.
For right now, I think this is a good way to build a team. You're keeping LeBron happy. You're surrounding him with some better shooting. Westbrook can carry the load for LeBron a little bit if should he choose to rest a little bit more in the regular season. Um, I think they've done a really good job. Again, I said that last offseason too, and I was proven wrong. So it's sort of a wait and see. But I think that they've done a good job now covering up for the deficiencies of Westbrook and for some of the deficiencies that the team had last year.
Yeah, I really like the move to bring back Dwight Howard, because I thought he fit in beautifully 2 years ago. He gave them an edge, right? I think he was so big in that Denver series in the Western Conference Finals. I think he was completely in the head of Nikola Jokic. It kind of got him off of his game. So I think that was a wise move, bringing Dwight Howard back. Look, it's been rumored that Carmelo Anthony was going to play with LeBron James at some point in his career, and now it's finally happened as they're both going into their 19th year. But I thought Carmelo was a really productive player last year. As you said, he's still got a really good mid-range game, shot much better from three than he's ever shot before. He's going to get some good looks with LeBron and Russell Westbrook on the floor. So yeah, no, I think these are really good players. The key is you got to get them through the regular season and get into a spot where they're not the 7 seed, because it's not easy coming from the 7 seed to win a championship. The good thing for the Lakers is the West is wide open, right? I mean, everyone keeps talking about Golden State, but Golden State's not turning the clock back to 2015. I mean, this is not 6 years ago. Steph is still great. It's not as great as he was 6 years ago. Klay Thompson has missed 2 consecutive years. Draymond is not the player he used to be. And the secondary players aren't as good as they were on that team. Whether it be uh, Harrison Barnes or Iguodala or whoever else.
Right.
That was a team that was built on some really good role players. No, so the Lakers I think have done what they had to do, considering you have what, close to 120 million dollars tied up in three players. There wasn't a lot of wiggle room there, so you kind of, beggars can't be choosers. But people want to play with LeBron. People want to play with the Lakers. And if you're Carmelo Anthony, who's got everything on his resume but an NBA championship, hell, he doesn't even have an NBA Finals appearance. This is where you go.
Yeah, I think it makes sense, and this is the great advantage of the Lakers and of having LeBron on your team, and they happen to have both those things in
Right.
LA. You can recruit guys who will play on lesser contracts to fill out your roster, and some of these guys who signed probably could have gotten more on the open market, but instead chose minimum deals for a chance at a ring, and that's really the big one of the big advantages of having a LeBron James on your team and of being in the Los Angeles market. That's just how it goes. It's frustrating for other teams, but that's how it goes. I saw the Nets, I think, had a similar sort of thing happen to them too, where they were able to get Patty Mills
Mm-hmm.
today, probably
Yep.
for a little bit less than what he was, what he would have been on the more open market. They also re-upped Bruce Brown Jr. Who was a key player for them last year. Blake Griffin signs on a veterans
Mm-hmm.
minimum contract. So, they lose Dinwiddie, but he didn't even play for them last year. I think the Nets did really well to get
Yeah.
Patty Mills, who I would love to see on the Celtics too. Again, I'm not sure that Brad Stevens even knows free agency started. He's watching the Olympics. So I think the Nets, you're seeing it too. People see the opportunity to win a championship, and they will sign there. So Brooklyn gets Patty Mills. Sap, do you think that's a good fit there too as the backup point guard to Kyrie
Absolutely.
Irving?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the guy's a winner. He's a character guy, right? So he gives you depth at that position. In key moments, you can play him on the court with Kyrie and James Harden. I mean, it'd be a smaller lineup, but we know what he's been able to do in the postseason. I just go back to the 2014 finals, and I know it's 7 years ago. He was money for the San Antonio Spurs in that 5-game victory over the Miami Heat. He's a pro. He's a pro's pro. Perfect guy to come off the bench on a championship caliber team. No, I think the Nets did very
Look
well. I
at
mean,
what he's doing in the Olympics, Sap. I mean,
yeah,
he's
carrying his team. Yeah, I mean,
carrying
it's pretty.
Australia.
Yeah, he's a pro, right? I mean, he's almost like Eddie House. Like that's what Eddie House reminded me of when Eddie House came to the Celtics. Like the average person, like who the hell is Eddie House? But those are the perfect guys on your team. They're going to give you 9, 10, 11 points a game, but in the postseason, they're going to be on the court in key moments, and they're not going to shy away from taking a big shot or making a big defensive play. Patty Mills, Eddie House, those are kind of guys you want coming off your bench in a championship driven team. And I think that the Brooklyn Nets did a fantastic job. I mean, look, we sit here today as we did, back in December, and it feels like Lakers Nets. And I still maintain if those teams were healthy, that's what we would have got in the NBA Finals last year. We'll probably get it next year, although the Lakers are so old that you have to kind of hold back a little bit of the enthusiasm on my part. But I think if LeBron's healthy, then he can make this work because that's what he does.
Yeah, I think the only team that tried to, in the past 24 hours, put a fly in that ointment or a turd in that punch bowl, whatever you want to call it, is the Heat. Are the only
Right.
team that have actively tried to block the Nets right now. I mean,
Yep.
the Bucks re-signed Bobby Portis on a nice deal. I think that's
Yep.
helpful for them. But they lost PJ Tucker, who also went to the Heat. By the way, we didn't even talk about that. Great
Yep.
signing for the Heat. I'm surprised he hasn't already been on the Heat. He's a perfect player for them.
Yeah, like I said, their defense is going to be better than the Dolphins' defense when you got Lowry, Butler, Adebayo, Tucker. We know the culture is defense in Miami. That is going to be a pain in the ass to play against, aren't they?
Yeah, if I were them right now, what I would do is move Tyler Hero and see if you can get another. Just really, I'm serious. Go all in on the veteran
On that
defenders.
veteran asshole team. Well, I mean,
Yeah, why not?
you do need some. Well, Hero had an off year last year. I think you're hoping if you're a Miami Heat fan that all these veterans around can talk some sense into Hero. I know he's a good-looking guy. He's really eating up, living on South Beach. He's dating an Instagram model, which is great. I mean, I'm good luck to, he's 22 years old. If we were 22 making all that money and look like that, we'd all be wanting to do the same thing. But you want to make sure that he's focused on basketball. Lowry, Butler, Tucker. I mean, these guys are serious dudes who, I think, PJ Tucker obviously is a guy who I think if he gets in your face, you're going to pay attention, right? Like he's not afraid of anyone. So you don't want to trade maybe Hero at this point because maybe his value's gone down a little bit because he had an off season. But he's obviously a player who could become a star in the league. I don't think he'll be a superstar, but a star in the league. And you also have to have some. The issue I have with the Lakers, and I think Milwaukee people are accusing of being an old team as well, but they had some young players, right? Whether it be Connaughton, Portis, hell, Giannis is only 26. So you can't just have a bunch of old guys because that dynamic doesn't always work. You want to sprinkle in some younger players, and Miami does have that with Hero, Duncan, Kendrick Nunn, who I think is a nice player as well. So it's a nice mix there in Miami, but I still don't think they measure up against Brooklyn, and I still don't think they measure up against Milwaukee because, look, Giannis could come back next year and play with so much confidence after winning that championship that he could be really scary. So that's why I would never discount the Bucks.
Yeah, I'd like to see the Bucks do something too. I think that the best method when you're a defending champion is to try to improve your roster
Right.
too. And
Yeah.
now they've lost a piece that was a key. He didn't score. We made fun of his box score stat line every game in the finals, but he was playing major minutes for the team that won the
Sure.
championship. So you'd like to see the Milwaukee do something. And they're a small market team, and they're a bit gun shy about trying to pay the luxury tax. But you'd like to see them, try to add to it and not just rest on their laurels of, okay, we got one, and, be happy about that. So we'll see if Milwaukee is active and does anything else, maybe on the trade front, or if they have the ability to sign a free agent. Sap, even though you refuse to show your face, kind of like the Phantom of the Opera of this show,
Yes.
I'm going to just do a quick lightning round rundown of some of these contracts, and I want you to tell me, I was going to say thumbs up or thumbs down, but nobody can see that. So maybe you say good or bad in
Okay,
terms of
that's good
the
enough.
numbers. Okay.
Yes.
For some of the guys we haven't talked about already. So let's start with
Okay, so is
Jared.
this is contract good for the team or bad for the team?
Yeah, not player. All
they're
the
all
players.
they're all good for the players.
All the players are very happy today. All right, so let's start with Jared Allen to the Cavaliers. Resigns with them 5 years, $100 million.
Bad. I mean, he's a good player. I guess that's the going market though for a player of that caliber. 5 years, $100 million. So I'm going to say
Ooh.
bad contract because I don't know how he's going to move the needle for the Cleveland Cavaliers. It seems like Cleveland can't get out of their own way. They
He
got
seems like a
Sexton.
rich man's JaVale McGee.
Right. Yeah. So I wouldn't have paid him that. No. I mean, again, I've always said this about sports. Unless the world's going to end, which there is a real possibility with the Delta strain, maybe it will end. But there's going to be an NBA season in 2022, 23, right? So there's no rush right now to go out and overpay for players. And then next year you go, what the hell did we do? It's almost like, you got this credit card and you decided, you know what, I'm going to max it out in the first week rather than, well, let me hold back and see when I really need something or really want something that I can use it for. So I think it's a bad deal.
Okay, so too much for him. Norman Powell, 5
Yeah.
years, $90 million to Portland.
Yeah. Way too much. I mean, again,
Okay.
maybe I'm just out of touch. I mean, you 5 years,
No, it
$90
seems
million.
like a lot of money for a
It
guy
does
who's
seem for a guy who's, again, okay,
should be the fourth best player on a team, is the
right. I
third
mean,
best player on their team.
right. Is Norman Powell, he's a good player, right?
Yeah, he's good.
He's good. He's slightly above average or whatever. I mean, we can get into the semantics of that, but yeah, that's an extraordinary amount of money. Again, I don't know is Portland all of a sudden going to be a contender because of Norman Powell? I don't
No, I
think
mean,
so.
he was on the team already last year.
Right. Yeah, but keeping him, is that gonna keep Dame Lillard on the team? Is Dame Lillard going to wake up today in Tokyo and say, "Whoa, okay, we got Norman Powell back here"? That's going to make me want to stay there. He's a key component. I don't think so.
Yeah. We talked about Evan Fournier, 4 years, $78
Oh,
million.
God, bad.
That's the best move the Celtics made, was not paying him
Oh,
that.
yeah. Well, although they blew the trade exception and,
Well, yeah,
should
because
have.
Danny Ainge, but
Yeah.
had no idea what he was doing by the end of it. Which all the Celtics writers and honks saying, "Oh, well, great job getting this trade exemption," and oh, Fournier, this is a good addition. Just wait and see what happens when they sign him in the
Right.
offseason. Well, they didn't. So
Yeah.
good job by Danny Ainge. Really, really bungled
Oh, they're
that one.
still cleaning up his mess. That's what
They're
Brad Stevens
nobody's
is going to have
choice.
to do.
That's
Cleaning
true.
up Danny Ainge's mess.
Absolutely true. Tim Hardaway Jr., 4 years, $74 million.
Dallas, you look at Dallas, right? Is there a team in the league that has a difference between its best player and second best player more so than the Mavericks? Like, I mean,
No.
I don't think it's even close, right? Because Luka,
Look what he's doing in the freaking
yeah,
Olympics, Sap. He's carrying a
I'm
bunch
actually,
of bums.
he's carrying Melania Trump, who was, I think, playing shooting guard for Slovenia, a country with 2 million people. Like Houston is bigger than Slovenia. There's 2 million people, and Luka's getting them into the medal round. And to be quite honest with you, Jet, I'm rooting for them to win the gold medal. I know I call me unpatriotic or anti-American, but I'm rooting for Luka and Slovenia to win the gold medal. I think that'd be a wild story. So you've got Luka on your team, who's whatever. I think at some point he's going to be the best player in basketball, right? I think if he spends more time on his conditioning and looks somewhat engaged defensively, he will be the best player in basketball. Who's the second best player in the Mavericks? Is it Porzingis, who sucks?
That's not a good situation.
And
it's probably
and
Tim Hardaway Jr.
right. So there's no other team in basketball that has that big of a gap between the best and the second best player on the team. So like, I don't know what the point is of that. Okay, so you bring him back, like he should be your fourth or fifth best player. He's your second best player, and you're paying him a lot of money for the next 4 years. Dallas again, hold up till next year and make a big splash. And you got Lucas 22. He's not going anywhere.
Yeah, I don't know if they felt with this like they had to send him a good message, being like, "Hey, we're gonna spend money here." But I would have just carried the cap space over to when it's a better free
Right.
agent class last year. But I don't know what the situation is with him right now with Dallas. Listen, he's under contract for a while, so they don't have to really hit the panic button. I like Tim Hardaway Jr. I think he's a fine player, but I would have preferred the cap space for next offseason and just, whatever, let him go. They said he was a priority. They treated him like a priority. Like you said, I mean, listen, Luka can make it work with a suboptimal roster. I actually think he can even win a championship with not. I mean, we just saw the two teams that were in the finals didn't have unreal rosters.
No.
But it needs to be better than this, because this is not. It's not good. I mean, it's really not a good roster outside of their star player, who's exceptional. I mean, literally, he is dragging a Slovenia team to the medals rounds that probably had no business qualifying for the Olympics, let alone being here.
No, it's truly amazing, and they're winning handily. It's not like they're just winning on buzzer beaters.
They smoked Germany. They beat Germany by like 40.
Yeah, no,
Germany has a bunch of NBA players on it.
Yeah, no, he's phenomenal, and again, you just look at that. I mean, you see making a demand like Aaron Rodgers wanted Randall Cobb traded back to the Packers, and the Packers said, okay, let's just keep him happy and go out and bring him back. I mean, is Luka saying, you know what? No matter what, I need Tim Hardaway Jr. to still be here. And if you're the Mavericks, you go, well, first of all, have to drug test you, because that shouldn't be a priority to bring him back. Sometimes NBA free agency is perplexing, because it's like, look, Steph Curry is signing a 4-year, $215 million deal.
Yeah.
Right. An extension worth every penny. I mean, worth every penny. Pay him more. The league should kick in. I mean, the guy is that important to the league. Whatever the hell the Lakers are paying LeBron, it's not enough. Whatever the Bulls were playing, Michael Jordan, it was not enough. Whatever the Celtics were playing Bird, not enough. Whatever the Lakers paid Magic Johnson, not enough. I'd like give them more money. I've always kind of been perplexed by the fact that the top salaries are only about twice what the middle tier salaries are. Like, I don't think you see that in any other sport. Like, Mookie Betts is making $32-33 million a year. Like, half the Dodgers aren't making $15 million a year. Like, it's just like, pay your stars. Whatever they
there
give
should
Steph
be no
Curry,
max contract. Shouldn't exist.
Yeah, just whatever
you
like
want.
I mean, yeah, and all of a sudden you've got guys, Duncan Robinson, 5 years, $90 million. He's making $18 million a year. He's only making $12 million less than Kyle Lowry, or 60% of what Kyle Lowry makes. That doesn't seem right. It's almost like you're paying the third actor in a movie almost as much as Denzel Washington. It just doesn't seem to make sense. But that's the and again, the NBA is comfortable with that. Give Chris Paul and that association a lot of credit because the even the middle tier or even lower tier players, they get paid. So, give them credit for that. I'm not begrudging anything to the players. God bless them. I mean, if I'm Duncan Robinson and they stuck a contract in front of me and a pen to sign it, of course I'm going to sign it. But sometimes the teams like lose sight of what they're trying to do, and I think Dallas is losing sight with this contract with Tim Hardaway Jr. Obviously, Tim Duncan would have been a better signing.
Still currently would be a
Oh,
better
sure.
signing
Oh
right
my God,
now.
could you picture Luka and Tim Duncan together? Even at
That'd be
Tim Duncan at 45 years old or whatever he is.
Yeah, I'm sure he could still get a double double.
Oh yeah,
No, I agree with you, Sap. I do think that. Listen, I think it's funny that every year the owners cry poor. Oh, the pandemic really affected our league, our product, and then they're handing out insane money to people left and right. These guys
yeah.
are so wealthy. They don't. They'll just spend the money. If they have the ability to spend
How,
it on free agents, they're going to spend it. I mean, there's not a lot of teams that are looking at it and saying, well, we have cap space. We're just gonna hold it. It just doesn't really happen that much anymore.
how much are the Clippers going to pay Kawhi Leonard to sit out this year, right? And
However,
then
however much it takes.
whatever it takes, and then that gives them the right to sign him a year from now because he can get more money from the Clippers. It's incredible. But Steve Ballmer's worth $80 billion. So what is 36 or $45 million for Kawhi Leonard this year mean to him? Absolutely nothing. I mean, they've never been relevant. They're somewhat relevant because of Kawhi and Paul George. So yeah, he's going to sit out this year, but he's going to get paid, and good for him. I'm not holding that against Kawhi Leonard. More power to him. But that's where we are now. So the Clippers are going to have to pony up, pay that money, and then next year work on an extension with Kawhi Leonard. So
Right.
yeah, it is kind of insane, but you know what? Good for the players.
You know what? We were expecting that Clippers Lakers showdown in the playoffs and it looks like it's just never going to happen. Much like we were expecting LeBron and Kobe to face off in the
Right.
finals, and that never
Never
happened.
happened.
Just some things that look inevitable never materialize in the
Yeah.
NBA.
Rogers Tom Brady Super Bowl. It did happen in the NFC Championship game, and it wasn't what I had planned to have happen. But
Right.
nonetheless, yeah, we sometimes it just doesn't happen. The other thing too about that is, isn't it interesting that we haven't heard anything about Kawhi signing that 1 year deal? He opted out, but that doesn't mean he's leaving. He just, will sign for a better deal with the Clippers. Kawhi, for a guy that never speaks and doesn't appear to like attention, he always makes his announcements later than everyone else. Remember 2 years ago when there was the frenzy of Durant and Kyrie Irving? They signed right away with Brooklyn and all the moves, and
Right.
Horford went to Philadelphia, and it was like July 5th before Kawhi signed with the Clippers. So for a guy who seems to be devoid of like an ego, he may have the biggest ego in the league. I mean, and then we hear the story coming out of ESPN that 2 years ago Russell Westbrook approached him to join forces with him in LA, and he used that conversation to then recruit Paul George, who at the time was Russell Westbrook's
That's
teammate.
cold
So,
blooded. Cold blooded.
oh man! In addition, yeah, he's again the meek shall inherit the earth, and that is Kawhi Leonard. Yeah, cold blooded man.
Yeah.
No one's going to speak to him at some point because, first of all, he doesn't speak back.
Yeah.
He's
What's he care? Yeah.
non-communicative.
What's he care?
Yeah, he's no one's speaking to him anyway, and he's got that enormous house in Southern California, which looks gorgeous.
Here's the thing too with him, Sap. Now all these teams have spent. They've blown their load and spent all their money.
Mm.
So really, the Clippers are the only place he can go to now that will pay him what he wants for the year. Because the teams that have
Well,
that had cap space have now used it.
now let me ask you this, because you're much better at this than I am as far as understanding the cap. And I mean, I like get a popsicle headache. I'm good with
Yeah.
math, but the cap to me is way
See,
too
I'm the
complicated.
opposite. I'm terrible at math, but for some reason the cap.
You understand the cap. Yeah, we're like,
That's great.
we're like idiot savants, right?
Yeah,
We've
very
got
much
our
so,
force,
yes.
and yeah, which again is not politically correct, but what the hell? Why wouldn't the Mavericks just take a gamble on Kawhi? Like, just
Uh,
Mark Cuban has a ton of money, right?
yeah.
Why not just say, Kawhi 3 years, 100. I don't know what the numbers would be, but could it work? Obviously, they got to try to get rid of Porzingis. Could they do a sign and trade with Porzingis and the? I don't know. Like,
No, they
why
could have
wouldn't
made it
they jump
work.
in on that and say, look, he's going to sit out the year. We'll rehab him. We've got to, we're going to make sure that our training staff is top notch. And in 2022, 2023, we've got a healthy Kawhi and Luka continually getting better. I don't know.
No,
That's a
they could have
big
made it
move.
work. They
Yeah.
could have made it
Okay.
work. They obviously would have not signed Tim Hardaway Jr.
No,
They would
why
needed
would
that
you?
space.
It's like buying a. It's like you really want a really, like, I don't drive, but let me use this analogy. You want a really nice car, and you settle for, I don't know, the $65,000 car when the $150,000 sports car is available, but you may have to wait a year for it. Like, if you're that wealthy and you've got already, the super talented Uber whatever Luka Doncic to wait. I like if Dallas, and I always expect Mark Cuban to be big and bold. That would be a big and bold movement. Would I mean, just to say, okay, here Kawhi, here's 4 years, whatever they could sign him for. Sit out next year. We'll get that knee straight. You come to Dallas, no state income tax. You're gonna play with Luka, because he's played Luka back-to-back years in the playoffs. He knows how good Luka is. And you put Luka with Kawhi Leonard, oh my God, that would be scary.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it certainly would be bold. Maybe Kawhi just said, I have no interest. I don't know. Again,
Who
he's
knows with him? Yeah.
non-communicative, but we do have a little bit of breaking news here, Sap. That
Okay.
was sort of breaking, but was expected. DeMar DeRozan is in fact going to the Chicago Bulls.
Yep.
So they continue their strong offseason. It's a sign and trade. He signs a 3-year, $85 million deal to Chicago. Heading back to San Antonio is Thaddeus Young, Al-Farouq
Oh,
Aminu, a 2025 first-round pick, 2022 second-round pick, 2025 second-round pick. So no Lauri
hmm.
Markkanen in that, but
Oh,
that's what the
interesting.
Spurs get in return. And so DeRozan, Ball, Vucevic, and Zach LaVine is
Yeah.
certainly a lot of offense on that team.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they'll put some points up, and Ball's a good defender, as is DeMar DeRozan, right? And again, DeRozan, I mean, he's a really poor man's Kawhi Leonard. Like, he does a lot of really nice things. Kawhi's a better deep shooter than him, but they're both mid-range guys who could play defense and all of that stuff. I mean, Chicago now at least Chicago looks relevant for the first time in what, a decade, since they had a healthy Derrick Rose and
Yeah.
Noah and a very young Jimmy Butler or whatever. So I mean, they could be relevant again, which is always fun. So I mean, there's another team that if you look at the rosters, I mean, they can be on at least equal footing as the Celtics, right? I mean, you can't sit here today and say the Celtics have that much better of a roster than the Bulls. They have the two best players, right?
Right.
And Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, but then the Bulls have the next four best players if you're matching
Sure.
them up.
Sure,
So
without a doubt, I would say. So yeah, I mean, Chicago is certainly vaulting into the playoff conversation in the Eastern Conference with that move. In addition to the Lonzo Ball move, and uh, yeah, I mean, at least they're interesting for the first time. It looks like in a long time, Chicago is trying to put together a competent team. So is it a team that has a championship ceiling? I don't think so, but they're good, which is better than what they
yeah.
typically have been. All right, Zap, let's continue just going down this list of signings. Just give me, your good or bad opinion. Mostly you thought good for the players, bad for the teams. Mike Conley, 3 years, $72.5 million to the Jazz.
Oh my God, this might be the worst of all the deals.
Oh, you don't
Seriously,
like
I
that
mean, he
one? I
has
didn't.
no. It's yeah. I know. I'm sounding like Skip Bayless here, giving out grades to athletes he doesn't like, which isn't the case here. But we're talking about a lot of money for 3 years for a player who I love Mike Conley. I like him personally. He's been an outstanding player. He hasn't been really effective for what, 3 years? He got hurt again last year. I mean, again, it's a lot of money for a guy that's older. It's a long commitment. I mean, 3 years is it's not 4 or 5 years, but it's still a fairly long commitment. I think this is a bad move. But again, some of these organizations, they're kind of hamstrung and have to bring the player back to be relevant. And maybe I think what's happening too, Jet, with a lot of teams is they're looking what happened with Milwaukee and things kind of opened up for them in the postseason, and they're thinking, hey, if we tweak the roster and catch a break here or there, maybe that can be us.
Yeah.
It's not like it was, say, 5 years ago. We were pretty sure the Cavaliers and the Warriors were going to meet in the finals, right? And they did 4 straight years. And no one was crashing that party. Now it seems
Right.
like it's more wide open, albeit Brooklyn and the Lakers look like the two strongest teams, but the Lakers are so damn old, and the Nets have so many like
Insane
off the
people on
wall
their team. Yeah.
characters, right? Kyrie Irving and James Harden's going to show up looking heavier than me. Then they're not going to be as unbeatable as we think they are. So I think things have opened up. And you can even look back to 2 years ago, right? Toronto won the title. Like no one really expected that. So I think teams are saying, hey, let's just be relevant. If we're healthy, playing well, catch lightning in a bottle. I'll use, any more cliches. You can stop me if
Yep.
you want,
No, I
but
don't want
that they can make that run. I mean, look at even in Utah, they probably should have beaten the Clippers in the second round. They could have got to the conference finals. Maybe they beat Phoenix, and maybe they match up better against Milwaukee than. There's so many different things. I mean, everything worked perfectly for Milwaukee because the team they met in the finals was a bad matchup against them. Like Phoenix had no answer for Giannis, whereas a team like Utah with Rudy Gobert, a bigger team, maybe they would have had some sort of answer for
Yeah.
Giannis. So that's a big part of what these teams are looking at, which is actually good, right? It's kind of a fun thing that, hey, let's make a run. Look what Miami's doing. They're like, we're all in. We made to the finals 2 years ago. We should be a better team this year. Can you really count on the Nets with their kooky personalities, being unbeatable? And Milwaukee is still a flawed team. They're saying, hey, we'll take a chance. I think that goes back to what you were talking about the Celtics, who look like they've just kind of punting on the season.
Yeah, which again, I really hate that. I like the Mike Conley signing, Sap, for the pure reason that Utah is getting a above average point guard, and they
Right.
cannot attract free agents in general.
Hmm.
So he's better than the typical free agent that they would come to Utah. He's a super pro. I think that it, it's relatively movable. It's a big number, but I think it's still movable if should they need to do that and start over. So I actually like it. I don't think it's
Okay.
it's too bad. Again, if he gets hurt, then it looks terrible, and he has been hurt. But if he's able to stay healthy, I think it's fine. All right, let's keep going on this list, Sap. Rashawn Holmes, 4 years, $55 million, whatever, right?
Yeah, I mean, I know more about John Holmes than Rashawn
Yeah,
Holmes. So yeah.
yeah.
Who is
Derek,
Rashawn Holmes? And I'm not trying to be flip here, but I mean, you know more about Rashawn
yeah, he's
Holmes
a
than I
he's
do.
a
But
so, a solid center on the Kings, so we could just move on from that. um, Derek Rose, 3 years, $43 million, back to the Knicks.
that's fine. I mean, look, Thibodeau loves him. He loves Thibodeau. He's a character guy at this point. So, to pay Derrick Rose, what, on average, $14 million a year seems like a bargain to me. Played really well last year. I think they have to watch his minutes a little bit
He's
more
one of
this
the
year.
best six men in the league, I'd say, last year.
Absolutely. Yeah, I got no problem with that. And I've always been a fan of Derrick Rose. I mean, he's an easy kid to root for. We know what he had to go through growing up in a tough neighborhood in Chicago, got drafted by the Bulls, and looked like he was on his way to being a franchise player till that gruesome knee injury back a decade ago. But he give him credit. He's worked his ass off to become, still a relevant player. So I think that's a good move by the Knicks.
Doug McDermott, 3 years, $42 million to the Spurs.
Wow. Um, Well, the Celtics could have had him right in a deal
They could
last
have,
year,
yep.
right? Yeah, they
Could
could
have.
have had him, and they
He
chose
shot
not to.
40% from three last year, and that's what
Yeah,
gets you paid in the NBA.
I guess so. Yeah, look at Duncan Robinson because
He also
again,
played. He won the award for worst defensive player of the year at our year-end award
yes,
show. So
yes, that's something. It's something to win that award. I mean, it's just as easy to be the worst as it is to be the best.
yeah,
So yeah, I mean, look, if you can shoot, there's a role for you. Whether it's Joe Harris or Dougie McDermott, or pick anybody. Pat Connaughton had a nice postseason for the Bucks, a guy who can play some defense and can shoot three. So that's what you're going to get paid. $14 million a year. I guess that's a decent contract. I can kind of go along with it because again, I can look at the $14 million range and say, okay, that's okay. When you start to get 25 million a year, to me, that seems like you're biting off a little bit too much than you can chew.
well, okay. So the next guy we talked about him at the top step was Kelly Olynyk. It's 337. Is McDermott? $5 million better than Olenek. I'd
Yeah,
say they're about the same player.
except McDermott's an elite shooter and Olynyk is not. Maybe it's
Yeah.
because we got to see Kelly Olynyk so much here, and he was fine. You know, he was a contributing player. Maybe it's the fact that Danny Ainge drafted him instead of Giannis.
Yeah,
Maybe that's
that's
something
killer.
we're always going to remember. I mean, is he that draft's version of Sam Bowie, like a guy that was drafted ahead of Giannis, who went
Well, there's
15th?
14 guys who
Yeah,
were
I mean,
Sam Bowie that draft. Yeah.
it's almost like it's not quite to the extreme of Tom Brady when people say, "Oh, the Patriots should have drafted him earlier." Every team had a chance to draft him. They didn't. He went 199. I mean, going 15 is a little bit different, but there were teams that, you look and say, man, imagine if they had Giannis on their roster. And you don't know if Giannis was going to develop on another roster the way he did here, because
Yeah.
he went to
True.
Milwaukee. No one really knew much about him. He was able to develop. Sometimes in a bigger market like here or LA or New York or whatever, it's like, hey, you took the guy 15th, we want to see him. And he obviously needed time to build his body and build his game. So yeah, I mean, the Olynyk contract, I think is worse than the McDermott contract because McDermott is an elite shooter.
All right. Let's see what else we saw. Nerlens Noel returned to the Knicks on 3 years, $32 million.
That's fine. I mean, that's again about a $10 million
Yeah.
average. He's a serviceable player. He's a guy who, you remember when he was at Kentucky, he was going to be the first pick in the draft. He
Yeah.
fell to sixth that particular year, and he's kind of cobbled together a decent career, made some money, which good for him.
He's
a local
basically a
guy.
rim protector, and that's
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
Your guy Alex Caruso goes to the Bulls on 4 years and $37 million. Is LeBron gonna miss him a lot, Sap?
I think the Lakers will miss him. First of all, he's, like 10 years younger than the average Laker right now. So, he would give them some youth. Good defensive player. He seemed to have a good vibe with LeBron, but I think he's going to a good situation. And we see in Chicago, with them bringing Lonzo Ball on as a free agent, doing a sign and trade to get DeMar DeRozan. They've made some nice moves. So I think he's going to a good situation. I think that's a good move for the Bulls. Again, when you're under $10 million a year for a guy who can contribute, give you 24, 26 quality minutes a night, that's where we're at in the NBA.
Ass. He
He
tries
does
really hard.
and you interviewed him, didn't you, a couple of years ago?
I did.
So that's a good thing.
I think he's. I think actually they got him on a relative bargain. I think that's a good deal for him.
Anybody making less than $10 million a year in the NBA is a bargain, right? The way we're looking at it, because actually that's pretty much the average salary in the NBA. The cap is going up to over $120 million. I know you carry 15 players on your roster, but you really pay 12, money. So yeah, the average salary among the top 12 players on a given team is about $10 million a year. So he's earning basically an average salary, and I think he's a good player.
Postseason star campaign. He goes back to the Suns on 3 years, $19 million.
That's a great deal for the Suns. I mean,
seems like it.
Doesn't it? Because I mean, he's a perfect backup for Chris Paul, and I think next year you're going to see maybe some more load management with Chris Paul, because it feels like he kind of wore down as the postseason continued on. I mean, he's 36. He's not a big guy. He's got a lot of mileage on that body. So I think that's a great move by Phoenix in a real team friendly contract. With all that said, because I was impressed with campaign. First of all, I just like the name.
Yes.
But I think he's a quality player, perfect backup for that organization. And again, you keep a lot of the same pieces in place, and I think that's how you grow as an organization, rather than bringing in 6 new guys.
And I think a really good under the radar move for the defending Western Conference champions, JaVale McGee, 1 year, $5 million to Phoenix.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
I think he would have made a big difference in the finals.
It would have helped because, unless Monty Williams decided not to put him on the floor. I mean,
look at you criticizing your favorite coach.
That's my guy, Monty Williams. But he just wasn't adaptable in the finals. It's like, yeah, let's let Giannis score 50 and then we'll deal with the rest. And Giannis went out and scored 50. So I think that's a good move, because again, you're bringing in championship DNA in JaVale McGee, who's won 3 titles. Again, he's never been the best player on his team. Heck, he's barely started on any of these teams, but he's a winner, smart player, good rim protector, and that's what they need. And it allows DeAndre Ayton to develop even more, having maybe a mentor on the team that can, kind of teach him the ropes. I think that's a great move by the Suns.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's a good price too for a guy who doesn't have to play a lot, but he can still play. He's on Team USA right now,
right?
For some reason. And I do. You identify. Okay, what was our what? Why did we lose in the finals? And a big reason was because you could not defend the paint at all.
Right.
And
Yep.
he defends the paint. And DeAndre Ayton now doesn't have to play every minute of the game. You had no real backup center. Even Saric, even though he went down, wasn't really a backup center.
No.
He just happened to be there and be relatively tall. We saw in the last game of the series a couple nice things from the
Frank
guy from
Kaminsky.
Frank Kaminsky. Thank you, Sap.
Yep.
But I mean, McGee is an upgrade over him.
Oh
So
yeah.
I think that was two good moves for the
Yeah.
Suns. Sap, a move that I think is going under the radar. That was a really good move. Otto Porter Jr. for the veterans minimum to Golden State.
Yeah. Quality player. You get him at a really decent deal. And in that system, right, with Steph, and obviously if Clay comes back and is close to being what Clay Thompson's been over the last decade, you're going to get some real opportunities out there. So that's a good contract by Golden State. Now we have to see what they do with the two players they drafted at 7 and 13. Are they going to keep those players? Are they going to move those players?
Right. What's
We'll see what
Wiseman look
happens.
like?
What's Wiseman, if he can, adapt. Just imagine if they had just taken LaMelo Ball second.
Ooh,
As
yeah.
opposed to Wiseman, and again, because Steph and Clay and Draymond, what makes them so great is they can really kind of fit in with other players, right? They're very adaptable. Man, that would have been quite a sight to see if they had LaMelo instead of Wiseman. Of course, maybe would have heard LeVar talking about how LaMelo was better than Steph Curry, but because obviously Lonzo Ball was going to be better than Steph Curry, and that clearly hasn't happened, nor is there really many guys that are in the league that are ever going to be looked at as better than Steph Curry, other than obviously LeBron, Kevin Durant, and maybe Giannis, if Giannis continues and wins championships and, one or two more MVPs, that's about it. But yeah, no, that's a really good move because that's a quality player, again, a veteran. And Golden State always seems to find those players. It's a good organization. It's a great place to live. So I think that's a really fine move by them.
Yeah, last one we can talk about here, Sep. Bobby Portis returns to the Bucks, 2
Yeah.
years, $9 million. I think he took a significant discount based off of how teams react to players playing well in the finals. I think he could have made a lot more, but he clearly wanted to be back in Milwaukee.
Yeah, good for him because he was a vital piece to that team. When they were playing Brooklyn in the second round and he was, getting, DNP CDs, I was like, why isn't he on the court? He's going to bring an edge. He's going to, bang. He's a good defender. He can hit a corner three. He was a big part of their championship run. You get him back for a really friendly contract.
I almost feel like he could have gotten double that on the open market.
Yeah.
Sep. I mean, because he's not old. I mean, he's a veteran, but he's still, I think, under 30. I think a team would have given him 2 years around 17, $18 million without much of an issue.
I wish the Lakers went there. I mean, seriously.
2 years and 9. I mean, that's.
Yeah. Unless he just was like, whatever Milwaukee gives me, I'm going to go back. Some people just value winning and also value playing with their teammates, right? Like, so it seems like
they love it there. Love it there.
And Giannis has got to be maybe the easiest superstar to play with. And then you got Middleton and you got Holiday. So they've got a really good thing going there. I mean, it helps they just won a championship. If they had lost in the second round, then maybe they would have blown things up. But sometimes players say, look, I'm happy here. I've made good money already. I'll continue to make money, but I want to play on a championship caliber team. And that's where he's at.
Let me ask you this question, Sap. We haven't really talked about them because they lost Lonzo Ball in free agency. They added Devontae Graham. What's the Pelicans' plan? I don't really see what they're doing here. It seems like Zion isn't happy.
Right.
And now they lose a guy who was, for nothing, who was, a pretty good player, and I thought would have been a great fit with Zion for the future. What's going on there?
Yeah, that makes no sense. They should have kept Lonzo Ball. You'd have your point guard. I know it seems like they're trying to run their offense through Zion, which is all well and good, but that's going to put so much pressure on him mentally and physically. I mean, he's a big man who's had some injury concerns. Now you're going to ask him to do even more. I don't get it. I mean, it's not a well-run organization. The same people that own the Saints own the Pelicans. It seems like they spend 95% of their time running the Saints and maybe 5% of the time running the Pelicans. I mean, this is an organization that had Chris Paul. They screwed that up. They had Anthony Davis. They screwed that up. They've got Zion now. It seems like they're well on their way to screwing this up as well. Um, David Griffin is running things in New Orleans. He is an NBA champion thanks to LeBron James. He got paid a lot of money to run the New Orleans Pelicans. Again, we've seen this with the likes of Tom Brady and LeBron James. A lot of executives and coaches, et cetera, and players get paid a lot of money just by being associated with those two all-time great players. And I think we're seeing that with David Griffin. I have no idea what the Pelicans are doing. It is weird to just let Ball go. You got Brandon Ingram and Zion. Like, you need something else there. You need someone that can take some pressure off of those guys, not add pressure to them.
Yeah, I agree. I don't understand what they're doing at all. It seems like this is destined towards an inevitable breakup between
Yeah.
Zion and the Pelicans, which is obviously a disaster for them. I mean, they lucked out in getting him, and they seem like they're doing everything they can
Mm-hmm.
to hasten his exit there. So I don't really get it there. Sap, is there anything I missed that you wanted to talk about with free agency? Do you
No, I
want to
think we
dump on the
covered it
Celtics
all.
more? We can dump on the
Well, no,
Celtics more as the days continue.
well, no, I'm sure we will. We'll be doing probably what, 2 podcasts a week, during the
Yeah,
off season. So that'll give us ample time to shit on the Celtics. Although I don't think their approach is all that bad, because I don't know, like, other than Lonzo Ball, I'm not sure who else would have been a great addition for them. I mean, obviously Kyle Lowry, but he was going to Miami. Could they've gotten involved in DeMar DeRozan with a sign and trade? I don't like. They have wings, right? In Brown and Tatum. They need someone who's going to take pressure off those guys. I think they need a real point guard, which I think
yes.
Ball would have been perfect for them. They seem to have added enough size that they can be decent up front, whether it's Horford or Moses Brown. You got Robert Williams III. You've moved on from Tristan Thompson. So they need a point guard. They really do. And I don't know what they're doing with Marcus Smart. I know you love him. I would move off from him. And that's what I thought was going to happen with New Orleans. Didn't it make sense? Maybe a sign and
Yeah,
trade
I'm falling
with that.
less in love with him. Listen, I appreciate everything Smart's done. I do love the way he plays, but you know what I love more is trying to win a championship. And
Right.
if he's the cog that can get you the player
Yeah.
to win a championship, then I don't care. Move him. That's fine by me. Celtic. I mean, I know to a lot of Celtics fans it sounds horrible, but you do whatever you do whatever it takes to win a championship. This
Yeah.
isn't a championship roster. If trading Marcus Smart is the mechanism to get you a championship roster, then I don't even think twice about it. So yeah, I think that it's disappointing their lack of activity, and I don't know if they understand how the current landscape of the NBA works, but they're going to lose Jason Tatum if this sort of thing continues.
Right.
They're just going to
Yeah.
lose him for nothing.
Yep. In two.
And it
Yep.
it
No,
sucks.
you're so right. You're right, because in 2 years he's going to knock on someone's door and say, "I'm out of here." And it's like, at that point you're like, okay, we're not going to be able to sign him to another max contract, and now his value goes down to what, 50 cents on the dollar, and you have to send him somewhere for 3 first round picks in 2028, 2030, 2022, and then some marginal players, and then you're back to square one. Yeah, you better get someone in here. And again, I think Ball was the one player. We both agree on that. And for the money that Chicago gave him, I think the Celtics should have been in play. Or were they just, did Brad Stevens take this literally, that you can't talk to players till 6 o'clock
Yeah.
last
Oh,
night?
he definitely did. He
Okay,
definitely
so
did. Yes.
I mean, he's obviously a guy
He's a
who,
rule follower.
he's a rule follower, right? Dots his I's, crosses his T's, and like, it's 6 o'clock. Let me get a hold of Lonzo Ball's agent. Well, Lonzo Ball's already committed to Chicago. Like, this is where this is where, like, Red Auerbach would have been fantastic.
Yeah.
Or Bill Belichick currently. Like, these guys, they're all about winning. If they have to skirt the rules a little bit, so be it. And every team's doing it. Anybody would be naive to think that no one contacted anybody till 6 o'clock last night, because there were deals being announced at 6:01. I don't think 4-year, $85 million deals are done in 32 seconds and
Yeah.
announced in 32 seconds. And I know Woj is on top of things, but not that quickly. So maybe the guy doesn't know how this works. First time general manager, Jet, right? And he's trying to right the wrongs of Danny Ainge. It almost seems like he's having a pissing contest from afar with Ainge, like he's trying to right all the wrongs of Danny Ainge or get rid of the players that Ainge
Right.
liked that maybe he didn't like. That's why we kept hearing these rumors of Jeff Green and Isaiah Thomas and Kelly Olynyk and Avery Bradley. I mean, it's like, they're going to bring back the Bridgies, which, whatever. But
It
that's the
infuriated
interesting part.
me.
Yeah, I was just
It's
like,
just
what
like,
are, what
well,
are
you
you
bring
doing here?
everybody's saying, "Oh, run it back onto run back losing."
Right,
You
run
don't
back
run
what?
back a team that lost in the conference finals. That is stupid. That lost in the conference finals 5 years ago. I mean,
Right, and now
it's
those guys
stupid.
aren't as good as they were 5 years ago. I mean, I
Right,
know
right.
the Lakers have gone old here with these players, and I kidded how old they are, but they still have the foundational piece in LeBron James, right? Because
Right.
he make everything better. I don't know if Tatum and Brown have that in them. I think they're marvelous players. They're not force multipliers. I've said this a million times yet. There's about 5 or 6 force multipliers in the NBA. The Lakers are lucky they have one of them. I think Golden State has one in Steph Curry. I'm starting to think that Giannis might be that guy. I mean, he won a championship, so let's give the man his due,
Yeah. No. Yeah.
because he's so good on the defensive end too, right? So that's part of it. There's just not a lot of those guys. As great as Kevin Durant is, I don't think he's a force multiplier. I think he's just a great player. There's a difference. So, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, wonderful players, but they're not necessarily force multipliers. They're going to need some help. They need a point guard that will take pressure off them, not add pressure to them. And Lonzo Ball was there,
Yeah, they
and
needed
they
a
blew it.
distributor, somebody to run the
Right.
offense, a distributing
Yep.
point guard. Kemba
Yep.
Walker wasn't that. I mean, Kemba
No.
Walker was a nice player. Obviously, he suffered a lot of injury stuff, but he was a score first mentality,
Right.
score first guy.
Yep.
Tatum and Brown should be your primary scorers, and you need a point guard who can play
Yep.
defense, distribute, and run a fast break. And Ball checked off all those boxes. I know it
Yep.
wouldn't have been easy to get him here, but it did seem like a good fit. And as far as, and this is the last thing I'm going to say on the Celtics, Hap, you know what current players don't give a crap about? Future financial flexibility. They want to win
Right.
now. So
Yeah.
they're going to lose Tatum. I'm going to call it right now. They're going to lose
Hmm.
him. Unless they make a really bold move, they're going to lose him. Because I don't think he has any loyalty to Boston, nor should he. I mean,
No.
what have they done for him? They haven't really surrounded him with a really good talent. In fact, that they've every year he's been here, it seems like the roster has gotten worse.
It
So
has. Yeah, his
uh,
best roster was his rookie year. It's
yeah,
gotten
so
worse every year since. So yeah, it's frustrating if you're a Celtics fan, because it's like it doesn't seem like they have a plan, right? It's just kind of like, okay, we have Tatum and Brown. They're really, emerging stars, emerging superstars, whatever category you want to classify them as. But like, what else are you doing here? You trade Kemba Walker, you get back Al Horford because it's supposed to be a good contract. Like, is Chris Dunn, Josh Richardson going to do anything? Are they even going to play a game for the Celtics? Or are they going to get moved? Like, it's there's a lot of like uncertainty here, and it doesn't seem like there's any single message coming from the Celtics. And I think it may go back to financially. I don't think they're on as much of a solid footing as people think. I think the pandemic impacted them. So, and it impacted everybody else. And I just don't think Wick um, in that group are as financially flexible. Obviously, Steve Ballmer, I'm not going to compare
right.
anybody to him. The guy's worth 80 billion. But maybe they're not as flush in cash as some of these other owners, and they watch their pennies. And that may explain why Brad Stevens is the general manager. They're on the hook to pay him. So instead of just saying see you later and having to write a $40 million check, they promote him to general manager because they have to pay him.
Yep. No, dark days, Sap, for the Celtics,
Well,
unfortunately.
come
Let's
join
see
the
if
Lakers. I think
yeah.
that's a good option
No,
for you.
that will never happen. That will never happen. But all right, Sap, that's on that note, we'll end the show.
Okay.
We'll be here all off season long doing reaction to all these signings, and I'm sure there are more trades that are going to go down. Nothing's been resolved with Dame Lillard in Portland, obviously. And so that could be a big domino to follow. Yeah, we'll be here multiple times a week, giving you all the reaction, see what happens with Team USA going forward. And so make sure you find us. We are the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. You can find us wherever podcasts are found. We are presented by Full Press Coverage, and you can find us on Twitter for all the latest updates on the show and everything in instant reaction at JohnSap25, at Jet Stryer. We're also on YouTube at youtube.com/Jet Stryer. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we will talk to you later. See ya.